Hi guys, and welcome to an update on the Trigkey Ryzen Mini PC. I've been using this for about a week now, and I feel that I can finally give some thoughts on this tiny little PC and its performance and what you can expect for the money. So, just to quickly go over the specs again, this Trigkey PC features a Ryzen 7 5700U processor, an 8-core 16-thread processor which can turbo up to 4.3 GHz. It features 16 GB of DDR4 3200 MHz RAM and a Radeon Vega 8 iGPU for the graphics. It also has a 500 GB NVMe SSD. I've also added a hard drive inside of it as well, so, a big mechanical hard drive for games that don't really need the fast space, and it came with Windows. So I've been using this for about a week. Both myself and my family have been using it for everyday tasks, so simple web browsing and programs and things like that. It has been fantastic. In fact, I think that the Ryzen 7 5700U inside this thing might be a little bit overkill if all you're planning on doing is viewing web pages and YouTube and things like that. 1080p and 4K playback are more than fine on this thing. It has more than enough grunt to do it, and the integrated graphics make light work of all of these things. It's a very nice, smooth, easy PC to use. I would highly recommend this PC if you were looking at buying something that goes to fit underneath a monitor or on the back of your TV or something. It's been a very pleasant experience. It's fast, it's quiet, and it's more than capable of doing whatever it is that you need to do it at. So we're going to go into a few games now. Not many. I think I've got 5 here to talk about today. Some old, some new, but all of them are quite sort of common games. First game up is Wreckfest. So this game was played at 1080p on low settings, and everything else was set to low, so textures and things like that. And overall, it was a very smooth performance. For these videos, I have actually used the internal video recording on MSI Afterburner, and while it's not ideal as I don't have my capture equipment set up correctly for this thing yet, I've noticed MSI Afterburner takes at the most a couple of frames off the numbers you can see here, with the exception of the Division 2, which is coming up a little bit later on, where the performance impact from recording internally like this was around 5 or 6 frames, which I wasn't expecting actually. As you can see here though, Wreckfest is a smooth, playable experience. Honestly, if you drop the resolution down to 800p, you could probably hit that 60 FPS with no problem. I played this for around an hour and noticed no issues. There was no hitching or anything else like that, and it was a thoroughly enjoyable experience. It's one of those games that it doesn't seem taxing, but it can actually be quite taxing at the higher settings. So this is a good result for the Trigkey Ryzen 7 5700U. One of the things I want to point out briefly is pretty much all of these games you see today, you can see the performance metrics on the top left-hand side of the screen here. One of the things that you'll see in pretty much all of these videos today is that Vega 8 iGPU is pretty much pegged at 100 right the way through. It is working completely, to its limits on every single one of these videos, which kind of makes me think that the processor and the integrated GPU is ever so slightly mismatched. As you can see here, the processor isn't really doing an awful lot, whereas the graphics card or the graphics chip in the APU is at its max. So maybe a slightly better integrated GPU would have been better here, because you've got a lot of processor not being used, which is a real shame because it's quite a competent processor. This thing as well also doesn't consume an awful lot of power. One of the things that I suppose you may be thinking about more these days with the cost of energy is your power consumption, and this thing is a very low power consumption processor. I'll find out the exact amount of power it uses, put it up on the bottom of the screen now, as I'm not completely sure what its power consumption is, but it is a low power processor, and it will be good for keeping the energy bills down as well. Okay, so the next game we are going to go onto here is a Division 2. I played this briefly last week and recorded it off screen, whereas this is once again being recorded by MSI Afterburner. And we actually sat down and played this for about 5 or 6 hours yesterday, as well as sort of popping in and out of the game over the course of the week. This again is at 1080p. It's at 75% resolution scale, but otherwise all low settings. And again, as you can see, it's more than a smooth enough experience. The frame rate is on average around the sort of 44, 45 FPS mark. It does dip a little, it does go up a little bit more when you're in places with sort of like, you're in rooms rather than massive environments that the Division 2 has. But overall, this is once again a very good experience. It's a great performer, and I wasn't expecting it to perform this well when I initially loaded this thing onto the Trigkey, but it does perform really well. In fact, I have downloaded the original Division on this thing as well, and I would dare say that the Division 2 performs better on the Trigkey machine than the Division. I had to lower the resolution on the Division 1 to 720p to get the same kind of frame rates, whereas this is at 1080p with 75% scale. And as you can see here, it's more than playable. In fact, it's so playable that I sat down with my family last night and played it for a good sort of 5-6 hours. I have, again, no real issues to report. It's a very well-playing game. Next game up will be Grand Theft Auto 5. This is ever popular, so I feel that it's actually really relevant to include in a video like this. Once again, the game was set at 1080p, 5.6 resolution scale. Everything else was on low. Also, the pedestrian density was on fairly low sliders. Most of the sliders were also near low. I'll have to double check where those were exactly. But as you can see here, the game performs well at 1080p again. We're averaging sort of 50-ish frames per second. I do go downtown a little bit further in, and the frame rate does drop to around the sort of early 40s, mid 40s. This is quite a common thing for Grand Theft Auto 5. The downtown area is particularly taxing on hardware, so if you want to put your new PC under load with GTA 5, then hop in a car and go downtown, and that's going to be roughly your sort of minimum frame rate that you're going to see. There's a lot going on in downtown, so that's the best place to kind of tax your computer a little bit. When you head out to the countryside, the frame rate improves, and it was pretty much 60 FPS all the way through the countryside once I had left the city. That again is a normal thing, and it's going to happen as there's a lot less going on in the outskirts and in the countryside of GTA 5. So overall, once again, another very playable experience. It looks fine, it plays fine, and I had no real issues running this either. So we're going to come up to Fallout 4 now. Fallout 4 was recorded at 720p. I had initially set this to 1080p. The frame rate was around the 30s, but it wasn't consistent. The frame rate was all over the place on this, and I would rather have a higher frame rate than a higher resolution and sort of really struggling with the frame rate. So this is on 720p, all those settings again, and overall it was a playable enough experience. Frame rate varied between sort of 50 to 80 frames per second, so we did get plenty over 60 FPS if you can manage to play this on lower resolutions rather than higher resolutions. And it was, again, a more than playable experience, even at the lower resolution. This was one of the games that, out of all of them that I've tried so far, has really given me some problems. The frame rate was all over the place, and it simply wasn't consistent on 1080p. So I'd be going towards Concord, and the frame rate would be 30, 25, 20, 25, 30 at 1080p, which is why I had to lower the resolution on this to get a more playable frame rate. If you heard that noise, that was just one of my dogs in the background. And yeah, so again, a playable experience, albeit at 720p. But if you think about it, these are integrated graphics. 10, 15 years ago, you would not have expected to see this kind of performance from integrated graphics on a machine. It's staggering. I'm genuinely amazed. I have in my everyday PC, I admit it's slightly old now, but a GTX 1070, and it uses a lot more power than this thing. And although it is a more powerful card, I'm seeing the charm of owning something really small that goes underneath your TV that you can turn on. You can do all your web browsing and everything else like that. But then, if you want to, you can play a game as well, and it won't be at the highest resolutions or the highest texture settings, but the option is there for you. And I actually think there's a real charm to that. I really like that. Rather than having to spend all this money on power supplies, motherboards, and everything else like that, you can just buy a small box that goes under your TV. And if you want to play a game, hey, it'll play a game. So I really like that kind of thing about it. Another thing that I suppose I haven't thought of until right this second is, unlike my PC, I could put this thing in a backpack or something and take it around wherever I went. So it's fantastic. Okay, so we're going to go on to the last game here, Crysis 3. This isn't the remastered version. This is simply the original Crysis 3 that came out in 2013. Game here is set to 900p. I tried 1080p, but we were looking at under 30 FPS, which for me is kind of unplayable. So I felt that it was necessary to reduce resolution. So we're at 900p. We're at low settings here, and the frame rate averages between sort of 30 and 50 FPS here. It's quite playable. There's no real stuttering or anything to think of. In fact, there's no real stuttering in any of the games that I've showed you today at those resolutions. There's no hitches or anything else like that. But as you can see here, Crysis 3 plays really well. It's not 60 FPS, I wish it was, but there are times when it gets close to it and it starts to feel smoother. I played all these games with a controller, and the only problem with a variable frame rate is that it also affects the input latency of the controller. So if you try and move at sort of 20 FPS, you'll notice that it feels a lot different to when you're moving your character at 60 FPS. And using a controller with Crysis 3, yes, I know what some of you may say, but using a controller with Crysis 3 was a bit of a challenge, as the frame rate varied so much that it also affected the controller input of the thing. This isn't a machine-specific thing. This is going to happen with any system on any game. So this isn't a machine-specific thing, and I can't really sort of ding it for that. But yeah, Crysis 3, again, more than playable at 900p resolution, and I'm genuinely surprised that it can run these kind of games this well. I'm hoping to get the £35 PC hooked up to external capture. I'm actually halfway through doing that right now. I've had some compatibility problems with my external capture card and recording from the £35 PC. So one of the issues I have is that on some games it will simply display a green screen, which I can't really do anything with, and as a result I'll be recording internally using MSI Afterburner. But where possible, I'm going to be trying to record off my capture equipment so that those frame rates are not impacted in any way whatsoever by any software that's capturing this stuff. So that's going to be from the £35 PC. The frame rate sort of penalty here for using MSI Afterburner really wasn't an awful lot. It was, for most of these games, a couple of frames sort of here or there, like I said, with the exception of the Division 2, which did have about a 5-6 FPS performance impact. So I've played all of these games and more, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what games I've been playing over the last week and their average FPS according to AMD Adrenalin. I've been playing more than just the ones you see here today, and you can see that from this image here, all of the frame rates are more than sort of solid numbers. They're good, solid numbers. And it's genuinely been a really fun experience playing with this thing. Would I recommend the Trigkey to people? Yes, I would. It's a fantastic small form factor PC that goes under your monitor. You can do everything that you need to do every day. You could even use it as a work PC, and it has more than enough grunt to do everything that you want. 1080p or 4K video, or your internet browsing and things like that. It will not bat an eyelid. The Ryzen 7 5700U inside it is really potent, and I've yet to see it at 100% usage. The Vega 8 iGPU also allows you to play some games. Pretty much every game. I had no game refuse to run while I've been using this thing, and I think it's just a really sort of nice product. So would I recommend the Trigkey? Yes, I absolutely would. For the money that I paid for this, I've got a pretty fantastic little system, and I'm really looking forward to playing it more. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and if you like this video, please hit that like button. If you want to see more tech related stuff, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time guys, catch you later.